There's growing interest from the telco sector in the potential of multi-vendor disaggregated Open RAN systems. But might the challenges associated with systems integration be a barrier to mass deployment? Well, to find out more, I'm talking today with Robert Curran, consulting analyst at Appledore Research, which has been tracking the Open RAN sector for years already. So, Robert, thanks very much for joining us today. Good to see you again. Now, is systems integration the biggest challenge for network operators looking to deploy Open RAN-based systems?
Thanks, Ray. Pleasure to be here, as always. Is it the biggest challenge? I think the biggest challenge is setting and managing expectations in broad terms. But certainly in terms of making Open RAN happen, reintegration of disaggregated components is the least familiar area from an operator perspective. So yeah, it does really form that biggest unknown, if you like, compared to where people are today. Operators really have to decide as part of their planning, which direction they're going to go in. Are they going to, DIY their own systems integration? Are they going to give that to, a specialist systems integrator, or are they going to provide, give that work to, to an Open RAN specialist? So there's quite a few options there. So I think that's an extra part in the whole planning and decision making process. So getting into that area, introduces them to new things, new parts in the process, and new activities, which I know we'll talk about in a minute as well. So yeah, it's certainly the biggest, I think the biggest kind of technical concern, precisely because it's the least familiar.
Okay. Now, there's talk in the industry about blueprints helping the operators. Is it possible to have workable blueprints that the operators can use as a feasible starting point for their Open RAN plans?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, by definition, operators need to understand, how to put these pieces together again. And what's happening at the moment is the industry is learning to do something. Not just operators, but operators, vendors, traditional vendors, specialist vendors, new vendors. So I think it's pretty natural and appropriate that the industry is trying to put together, reference guides, blueprints of all kinds, which depend on the different strategies operators have, what kind of architectures they need, and what their goal is for Open RAN. Whether they are doing a replacement of an existing vendor, whether they're looking at rural, build out, or urban infill, or campus networks, private networks. All of those are different environments, different contexts. So everyone's trying to learn together, and I think the idea that there should be blueprints, predefined combinations of things, and also from a system integration point of view, a clear idea what the phases are to go through. That's all part of this industry community learning in real time and learning very quickly, I think, as well. So it's absolutely an important reference point. What we're seeing is operators are providing their own blueprints. They're buddying up with other operators to produce kind of peer-to-peer blueprints for the industry, as well as blueprints from vendors and vendor communities. And on top of that, you have groups like the Telecom Infra Project, TIP, providing a range of learnings in the form of blueprints there as well. So I think there's a lot of information, a lot of knowledge to draw on for operators, and I think it absolutely makes sense to look at where the industry is and pick up on those learnings as much as possible for new operators. Absolutely.
Okay, but could the use of blueprints or pre-integrated packages negate some of Open RAN's possibilities and impact best of breed opportunities?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think the reality is that's unlikely. Let's put this in context. The idea of a kind of perfect plug and play is, I think, not only a slightly unrealistic expectation in the long run, it's also not really the necessary expectation. I think what the industry wants through Open RAN is greater choice, not a kind of unlimited choice. So the practicality is that as long as there are enough combinations that work well together and that people know how to integrate, that's sufficient. I think in any context, once you introduce open into the environment, a sort of perfect any combination is very, very difficult to achieve. Doesn't mean we shouldn't aim for it and learn along the way, but I think the idea that blueprints will, as a concept, will prevent us from, as an industry, getting benefits from Open RAN, getting the benefits of more combination, more choice, more flexibility. I don't think blueprints are going to constrain that process.
Okay, great. And hence your reference at the beginning there about realistic expectations for this particular sector.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how can the Open RAN ecosystem help each other better in terms of overcoming these systems integration challenges?
It's really interesting. I think what we're seeing is the industry trying to learn. I mean, it's very difficult to imagine that we would overturn 30 years of systems integration knowledge, which has been built up inside of what is now a small number of vendors, and kind of overturn that just by interface definitions and plug fests. So I think that the best way that the industry the ecosystems can take advantage of this is first to do this openly. Share the expertise, share the knowledge, collaborate actively. There's lots of labs that are being set up, have been set up through things like TIP. Individual vendors are doing this, combining to set up standing labs for not only for things like performance testing and conformance testing, but even the system integration process itself. I think there's another part which is really important here that we shouldn't lose sight of, is it does need investment. The Open RAN breaks a number of conventional models, and one of the models that it breaks necessarily is the whole kind of test and measurement lifecycle and the systems integration for RAN subsystems. So the one of the changes taking place here is in making sure that more vendors invest in more lab type facilities, test facilities, particularly ones that are open, accessible to other vendors and combinations of vendors. So I think share the knowledge, invest. And learn, listen to what the industry is learning as we're going along. I think that's the way the ecosystem can best help itself to overcome the system integration challenges that certainly exist, but they're not different in nature than any of the other challenges this industry's faced.
So yeah, there's certainly a lot of that industry collaboration going on, and there are more facilities opening up. But is this enough? Are the industry bodies, doing enough, and are they enough to help share the information and the experience that's needed by the rest of the industry?
Yeah, I think there is a lot going on. I think it's evolving. We're seeing more players get into the systems integration area, not only the conventional SIs, but companies who are in the adjacent spaces, either they're coming at it from an equipment perspective or coming at it from an IT perspective. It's really interesting. I think what's going on with groups like TIP is very positive. I think we'll see more results coming out from that. The work to validate components and systems and combinations is also very, very valuable. Is it enough? I think hopefully it's enough. I think the proof is always in the pudding. The difference, in an Open RAN context, the difference in open generally is always making it work. I think standards will take you so far, but it's the practical execution of those, the application of those. That's where the learnings come from, and that's part of what we're seeing with Open RAN in particular. Issues in system integration relate to things like interpretation of standards. Which again is something that previously would have been visible more inside individual vendors rather than visible in the community. So I think just keeping the pace going, keep trialing, keep experimenting, keep collaborating. I think we should be on course for Open RAN to fulfill what potential it can fulfill.
Okay, excellent. Well, there's certainly things moving ahead, maybe not as fast as some would like, but you can definitely see, just looking back, to a year ago to where we are now, you can definitely see that things have moved on for sure. So thanks for joining us today, Robert, and for sharing your thoughts on this critical part of the Open RAN sector, and look forward to speaking with you again in the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you.